had this guitar for not as long as many of my other ones. It's one of the more recent acquisitions. And one of the last, well, not the last, the L Junior is the last one, but this is one of the most recent ones. I thought I was done purchasing, acquiring. But it's one that, while it's not one I've had the longest, it is one I've been playing the most frequently. I've been playing this one more than others frequently. What it is a Guild from the Westerly, Rhode Island plant. D25 Dreadnought. So my take on it is the D35, which is not this is 25. The D35 by Guild is like Guild's take on the Martin D18 timeless model. Well, this one has some different features to it. It's in the D25. This is important to note that it's a Sunburst model. So it's notated inside D25 SB. And a lot of these floating around in the market have mahogany tops and kind of a brownish look, not a Sunburst, because of that mahogany top. But at some point in their production, they got a spruce top and went from a flat back to an arched design for the back, where I don't know what kind of reflections I got here. That's what I'm wondering about. When you look inside the sound hole, you see that there's no bracing to it. You don't immediately see any bracing resting on the back of the instrument. Only when you begin to dip your eyes into the sound hole from this particular angle do you notice any kind of construction inside the instrument. Otherwise, it just almost looks like a box, and that's because of this laminate arched back. Makes it so there's no need for bracing. This is from a pawn shop on Reverb. I don't remember exactly what the name was now. I'd have to look it up through my Reverb dealings, but it's from a pawn shop. They were prepared to negotiate on it because I compared it with them to offerings that were online that were in seemingly better condition. There was like one offering. There was like two, and one of them had a reddish hue, and I needed to have one that had a brownish hue to the Sunburst. I didn't want an aggressive red guitar. I wanted brown because it's all based upon a guy at a tag sale, as you may have heard from my live stream lessons. I was walking down the street one day, happened upon this mysterious tag sale, where on the guy's front lawn, halfway between my home and my work, I walk, if you didn't know, all strewn about his lawn was instruments and bicycles, which is not typically what you see in this town. The music of this town is based upon reggaeton mostly. Daddy Yankee and the like, or whoever they got going now. The beat certainly hasn't changed. And, after I got a Fender Squier Series Strat off of them. It's a name brand Fender, but it's called Squier Series. Sort of a rare but not so good guitar. And then I got this cool silver tone. Something that looks real cool and clean in the background of my lessons on the stand. And then when I finally got in his house later in the evening after making this purchase, or right before, I noticed the Guild like this. Exactly like this, almost, just with different tuners. It had those 3 on a plate tuners, where this has individual Guild branded tuners instead of those import tuners. Typical Guilds of this era will have Guilds. It's got a nice ringing tone. This guitar came to its own when I put it in detuning. So long story short, I found out that instrument had sold. I was pretty upset about that fact. And like I've often done in the past, I set out to find one just like it. So I wanted to find one that had been played, that had the same similar mojo. His had a horrible headstock repair. He repaired it himself, apparently. And no bridge pins. Yeah, this was a guy who was very handy. He had built electric guitars himself. Not a professional by any means, but a very experienced guy. Has been around. Older gentleman. I met him and his wife at the sale. They live pretty close to me, so there's a guitar nerd right near me, a lot older. And I had found out that guild had sold, and he was only initially asking about $400, which is pretty crazy. It goes to show you the value that can go into these vintage guilds. Quite a bit of value to be had, quite a bit of tone to be had. And because I'm using it for this purpose, I'm not doing anything to modify the setup currently. The saddle isn't sky high. It's at a fairly reasonable height. Now it looks as though the bridge was lifting, but in fact, what it really appears to be upon closer inspection is that there's simply finish missing surrounding the bridge, where perhaps it was taken off and re-glued in the past. But the saddle certainly looks original. It's incredibly dark brown, almost the exact same color as the bridge itself. One of the pins stands out among the rest, the high E string. All the others are beige. That one's bright white. Same kind of missing finish on all sides of the bridge, really. The one this was sort of the purchase was based upon, you might say, had a huge tier of sound hole wear here, so I wanted to look for one that had been played, not a case queen. I'm not big on case queens in vintage instruments. I just said something doesn't feel right about a nice guitar that's been sitting in a case all its life. Condition doesn't mean that much. You might have something that's perfect condition, beyond excellent for its age, yet still needs a neck reset, same kind of issues that this may have. It's going to need a neck reset's pretty heavy work, isn't it? And that might alter someone's perception of it, and often people want to have a neck reset done by their desired luthier, rather than having it done beforehand or what have you. And right now I don't opt to have anything done to it. Because I got a lot of guitars, they're all playing kind of differently. One or two of them are kind of on the back burner, they're just not playing at all, like the Hoboken Guild. That's just as a fumbly setup. But this one I've made great use of it recently, so I wanted to tell you that. The Guild D25 SB, standing for Sunburst, from Westerly, Rhode Island. A very cool guitar, surprisingly lightweight, as I keep preaching about. Guilds from Hoboken are known to be much lighter than the 70s guilds, so this was pleasing to find that this one was lightweight for what it is. I'm pleasantly surprised with this. Got a nice spicy smell, not unpleasant. Made in USA, of course, it says right there. What was I gonna say? That I just had to have this model, and if this one wasn't available, I would have got the more pristine one that was available online at the time, and still is, last I checked. But that one's going for like $950. This one I negotiated down to like $750, and after I did it, I felt as though I could have got it even lower. But I don't often think, I often get the best deal possible, but I don't like to split hairs to the point where someone's going to ship me the guitar, the model I want. Don't split hairs about that. They're getting you the guitar you want. You can recoup the money. This idea of splitting hairs, I don't really like to do that. I negotiate, and when I made my mind made up, I make a move. So what it is a square-shouldered Guild Dreadnought from Westerly, Rhode Island. This beautiful brown Sunburst, which I haven't seen one better. the guy's was just like this. Just the bridge was a darker example. Same dark, deep sunburst brown. His had more wear and a ridiculous headstock break, and it had a little bit more wear on the neck, whereas this one has a crack on each side of the where the guitar fingerboard actually meets the neck, and up until about, I don't know, the 6th, 7th fret is where it smooths out like a regular new guitar. Otherwise, you can feel of crack. That's a unique, spot to be dealing with a crack. Oh yeah, see. Nut certainly looks original. Now look at this odd way they saw fit to put the tune, wrap the strings. Look at that. I call that candy cane style. Oh, folks. Ever seen anything like that? So I highly recommend these type of guilds if you can get a right one and maybe even test it, although I took this one on a whim. Because I often get stuck into certain models, and the models I tend to like often tend to be rare ones, and sometimes I can get the original one that I really wanted, which is nice. Sometimes I set out to find one just like, and they're never, no two are alike. But I always try to find one that captures the spirit of whatever sent me on the journey. And sometimes you find one that even outdoes the original one that sets you out looking for something like this, because there's always a model you're unaware of. And that guy having it in his house just down the road from me put me onto this model, and the model, and the fact that it had sold and was right under my nose and I got a chance to play it made me feel that feeling of gotta have it syndrome. So I've been using it almost exclusively in detuning with the slide. I'm using it for this new piece of music I just performed that I'm working out this afternoon, that I've been working out for like quite a little while now, bit by bit. And I just showed you, the most cohesive playing of it yet this afternoon, and I'm using this instrument not only exclusively for practicing it, or not only exclusively for performing it, but for practicing it. I often practice almost everything. I'm talking about practicing now. I'm talking about practice on the unplugged SG, but there are certain times where you want to practice on the instrument that you aim to perform on for whatever particular style or song that you aim to do when you have 11 instruments like this. Something to be said for practicing on the instrument that you intend to perform the piece on when you get around to performing, especially if it's an extensive piece like this. Some stuff you just transition over. You practice on the electric and standard tuning, and it's no problem. You just pick up the acoustic, bam, it's like nothing happened, except, you feel the extra tension. But, this drove me to practice in a very particular way with this particular instrument. It shipped with a very nice case. I thought I had a case for it, which now holds the Texan. And I kept telling them, yeah, I got a case. Like I was trying to, I don't know why I kept mentioning the case. But so it's a fine balance, since because I use it for slide, the action is high. It's raised up. Well, not raised up, I didn't have it done or anything, but that's the way I received it, and that's the way I designed. I started playing it in that style because I don't really enjoy to have modifications done to my instruments for financial and travel reasons. If I had a luthier in my back pocket, that'd be another story. As soon as I got it in this tuning, it really began to chime. And so I'm playing it this way. I'm kind of playing this bulky style, kind of positioning it down like this, and practicing. So that's what it is. It's with a solid spruce top, solid sides to my knowledge, and the arched laminate back, giving it a unique tone, kind of like the Gibson Gospel, except the Gospel didn't have tone to it or playability or mojo to it. It was a kind of a cool guitar, very underwhelming. I might like to recommend the earlier Gospels rather than the reissue, but it's similar in the sense of solid top, solid sides with spruce top, and mahogany sides with the big old laminate arched back requiring no bracing, and the square shoulder dreadnought look. Obviously the Gospel is a Gibson, this is a Guild. They both start with G. So you gotta keep it G when you want to play top G. What a dope that guy is. Misuses words all the time, trying to sound like he's got one thing right though: escape the matrix. But it's got loads of lacquer checking all over the instrument. Let me show you in this light, and it's got loads of dings. And so this was called fair condition. See, look at all the pick marks, especially there on the bass side. See, this is the kitchen light. Loads of scratches on the pick guard to where you can see the pick marks went all the way from the edge of the pick guard heading to the lower bow. So clearly, and look at big old ding there. This one here goes right into the wood. Noticeable buckle rash on the back of it, or something. That's what I guess it was. I'm not going to show you the serial number for fear of tracking me, but this is what I was talking about, the Guild tuners, not the ones that you see, those imported 3-on-a-plate tuners that some people, complain about. These are nice, kind of pretty nice Guild branded tuners, and individual ones that seem to really do their job well when you tune your instrument the way I described to you. Having that final movement, a tightening motion when you're in this detuning. So this went from an instrument I kind of leave out in the case to one I kind of cherish. And I almost like it even better than that Westerly F30, which is heavier than this. Even being a smaller instrument, it's heavier. And they're different beasts, but I don't know, I like this one. It really has a chime to it. It's got, I believe the board and the bridge are rosewood, the mahogany neck, so otherwise it's pretty standard outside of that kind of laminate arched back. But it's unique for a D25. These kind of D25s are indeed rare. So it was incredibly rare to find when walking down the street. And when I found out it was rare, and I could have bought it earlier but didn't, and it had sold, and there was a long list of people supposedly waiting for it, that kind of got under my skin a little. So I had to find one, and luckily I did. And it had a similar mojo. It had been played and been played in. The finish is kind of greenish to where it's fading here and here, so loads and loads of checking, the kind of things you can't recreate in a custom shop. Genuine wear, genuine exposure to various conditions, true pick marks, fairly significant sound hole wear, but nothing like the one the guy had. They're different instruments, the same exact model. See, the light's kind of shining on it, but there's finish chipped off the sound hole, and jagged tooth marks there where it had been played, and you can clearly see it's been played. I don't have a lot of instruments that I'd call that I purchased where I described fair condition, but that's what this was listed as. So I used condition as a selling point to try to get as low a price as possible, where in actual fact a lesser condition is kind of what I wanted. In a sense, I didn't want one of these case queens. I guarantee you this one is lighter, better sounding, and it has a nice feel to it. It's grown on me. At first I was really off put by this crack. This kind of cracked feeling where the neck and the fingerboard do not feel one. It feels like there's a crack, because that's what it is. It doesn't bother me now. The neck can feel a little sticky at times. I might like to address that just some basic way. Some kind of material. I don't often clean my instruments, but this might be the rare occasion where I try to get the neck feeling just a little smoother by cleaning. But the guy didn't do anything to it. He literally put it in the box after we made the deal. I've never got a shipping notification so fast. He sent it off and literally told me I'm going on a fishing trip. That was my chance to make an offer. And even when I called the pawn shop to inquire about tracking info, nobody was there because they were out on a weekend-long fishing trip or something. So that was the time to make the deal, So when I get an idea in my head for a model, I better look out. This guitar acquisition's coming, Let's see if I can show you the stripes there. The horizontal scratches there. So every vintage example is going to be different, but certainly it's been played and it's the exact model I wanted. I'm happy with it. And I often take chances, on buying guitars sight unseen usually. And I usually just go by looks and overall intuition. That's all with the thumb pick, but flat pick, you obviously dig in more. First I kind of was like, so about it, until I got it in that detuning and started really applying it especially to this new music. Came into its own, and it's become my go-to for this new music. So find yourself a Guild D25 Sunburst, folks, because they're rare, and these Westerly Guilds are certainly among those that are in the in crowd. They're being recognized for what they are, pretty value-packed, quote-unquote, vintage dreadnought. Whereas when I think of vintage, the scratch goes all the way to here. One scratch goes all the way from the edge of the pickguard to here. Typically when you think vintage, you don't really think 80s or 70s. In fact, that's kind of a bad era for Martin and Gibson, for example. But the Guild Westerlies are generally a pretty nice bet from this era. Guild doesn't have some horrible overshadowed era. They kind of consistently made good instruments, but the Hoboken ones are kind of cherished. The ones in New York, from New York, are cherished. And the ones from Westerly, while they're a little bit tankier, in my opinion, when you get a nice, fairly light one like this that's been played in well and structurally sound and all that, that's a good bet. But just don't think of, 80s Gibsons or 70s Martins and Gibsons as in the same class, because that's sort of a black sheep era for those particular makers. Whereas for Guild had its own things going on. The companies was changing frequently, and despite this, they continued putting out quality yet different instruments. Overall in the 70s, things got heavier. That's why this was a pleasant surprise for me to feel the solid yet reasonably weighted Dreadnought. You know. The neck is kind of somewhere between a Martin and a Gibson neck, in my humble opinion. Just a little look at that. Reasonably slim. You just sit with this guitar and you feel like a cowboy. It's got, like Mark Agnesi said a long time ago on Norman's Rare Guitars, you feel the construction of these Guilds, and he said we don't get many of them here for whatever reason. You feel the construction of them when you hold it. You really do. Solid, but this one is not overbearing or comically heavy. It's like a nice, solid, attractive looking Dreadnought, and that's the story behind it. I was walking down the street thinking I was done, and next thing you know, you're down another rabbit hole. But such is life. So what I'm going to do is upload this tonight, since it's long. And I got 3 other lessons to put out. I'll feed them to you slowly, as Adam Gusso says. Either checking on it. Wow. That's what I mean. Don't we show our age fast, folks? It's nice, though. The headstock has all these white specks, the type of things they'd love to recreate at the Murphy Lab. Somebody's sitting there, If condition's such a big deal, why are they putting fake scratches on new instruments and fake sound hole wear? I don't quite get it. Condition is everything. It's all backwards, Guitar, Plus, it's got that pawn shop mojo. Tag sale mojo mixed with pawn shop derivative nature. It's you always see guitars hanging up in a pawn shop, and good luck finding one like this hanging up in yours. Notice the binding, black binding. And that significant arched back. And it's almost Christmas. Pretty soon. Yet before you know it. So get your candy canes ready. I got mine, 6 of them. Anyway, see you guys pretty soon, man.